And hello, everyone. It's Thursday, and you know what that means. That means we get together and we talk about robot trading. How's everybody doing? Well, if you're listening to the recording, you can't even answer me. So, I guess we had a short conversation. But this week, we've got something extraordinarily interesting to me. And I am hoping, against all hope, that what's interesting to me is interesting to you. I think if something really fires me up or really makes me puzzle, I'm thinking that maybe you are the same. Now, if what I talk about is boring, then just email me, for crying out loud, and tell me what it is you want to talk about. I have so many things in my head. I have so many things that I'm excited about right now. I can talk about multiple things, but the things that strike me in the last 7 to 10 days are the things I talk about. So if you're interested, email me, or you can email me and say what a great job it is and how it changed your life. I like those too. If you're interested, this is my website. If you want to sign up for the Wednesday weekly newsletter, it just keeps growing and growing. It's taking the world by storm. What are we up over 2,500 and climbing people on that newsletter? I've gotten some really, really nice compliments, by the way, people who really look forward to that every Wednesday. That is super nice. I really appreciate that. I do. I really appreciate that. I don't know what else to say. So thank you for writing nice things. And all you got to do is go to scottwelch.me, click on that button. You get a free ebook and life goes on. You get on the weekly letter list. Now, let's rant a little bit, all right? Let's talk about trading for a living. Isn't that why we're here? It's why I'm here. We want to be able to have a life where trading pays for our expenses, right? Now, every now and then, normally I ignore all negativity, but every now and then somebody says you can't do it, or somebody says it's impossible and trading for a living is too hard. And I can't tell you how angry that makes me when people say you can't do something. Now, when I say angry, it actually makes me very happy because I get really motivated. As a coach, all I did was try to find people who say something can't be done, and then I actually did it right in front of their face. So anyway, if you say trading can't be done, I kind of get excited, but I also get angry. Now, here's my rant. Trading for a living is possible. Anyone who says it's not, I'll debate them. I'll debate them anywhere. I'll travel the world and destroy them verbally. All right? You can't really argue that it's not. Oh, yes, you can. Oh, yeah? Well, shut up, weird voice. But it's really hard to do. I'm not saying trading for a living is easy. I'm saying it's possible. And if you want to do it, you are not crazy. But why is it so hard? Well, because you have to stick with it. You cannot trade for a living if you quit and don't trade for a living. Now that seems like it makes sense, but everybody quits. So many people look at trading systems and then quit it and then move on to something else, okay? You cannot trade for a living for decades, and that's what we're talking about. I'm not talking about trading for a living for tomorrow. I'm talking about trading for a living for life. I'm talking about your life changes forever because your expenses are provided for. That's what we're talking about. Forever, for decades, right? But if it's hard because you have to stick with it, isn't that just like everything else on earth? I mean, why do people pick on trading? Trading is so hard. Well, isn't that anything? Isn't anything so hard? No, trading is harder than everything else. You see that? It's in italics. That's one of the voices I hear in my head, right? Well, voice in my head, shut your hole, okay? Trading isn't harder than everything else. It isn't. Remember a while ago, and I talked about it in a webinar and talked about it on the blog post of the weekly newsletter, we talked about Mr. Money Mustache. Remember we talked about it? And I just call him MMM, Mr. Money Mustache. That is a blog. And you know what his blog is? Do you remember? It's someone who quit his high-paying engineering job so that he could live basing his entire fortune, his entire life on index fund trading. That's it. He saved up money. He and his wife both quit lucrative, high-paying jobs, cut their expenses down to something just manageable, and then doesn't have a job and just lives off the interest of that account. How hard is that? Put money in an index fund. And by the way, how much trading you do in an index fund? Zero. You put your money in an index fund and then just take out money each year and pay your expenses, right? Is that harder than everything else? That sounds easier than everything else on earth, right? And the example, remember we went through all the numbers? He's saved up roughly $600,000 into his savings account. I told you it was a high-paying job. And at the typical averages for the market over 100 years, it's been more than that the last 5, 10, 15 years. So it's actually more than this. But the averages over about 100 years would throw off 40 to 60 grand a year if you save that up. So let's review how hard this is. Save the money. Maybe that's the hard part, but let's assume you have. You take this money, put it in an index fund, take out money once a year, pay your expenses. So trading for a living is possible, right? How is that harder? That's 0 hours of work, okay? So when I give examples like that, I get really angry and motivated. Don't tell me it's not possible. 90% of people fail. Just about nobody would fail if they had this much money to start with, all right? Now, I understand all the different circumstances. I'm just telling you. Okay, now let's get into it. Well, what if you need more than that? What if you need 70K a year, but you only have a system that takes 40 or 50, or you only have a job paying 50,000? Well, I need $70,000 a year. Well, that's a lot of expenses, especially if you're a single person. But anyway, you need 70,000 a year, and you have a job that only pays 50. Okay, what do you do? I'm not talking trading now, just talking life. Okay, let's say you come with the same, right? People come to me with trading and say, well, I need this amount a month. Okay, great. That's this number. Well, how much do you make now? Well, how much does your trading system make now? Oh, well, safe trading system. Just kidding. Let's say you need 70, you make 50. What do you do? It's not enough. Do you go around on blogs and message boards and saying that working for a living is impossible? All this working for a living is stupid. It never works. Right? Isn't it the same argument? Right? No, you wouldn't go around saying working for a living is impossible. You would, A, save up more money so that 50,000 is fine, right? Save more money so that it can augment your 50K job. Or just find a way to make more money. Maybe you do overtime that you pass up. Maybe you go for that promotion that you never bothered to do. Or maybe you just knock down expenses. Same thing, right? A way to make more money is to spend less money, right? Penny saved is penny earned, right? You wouldn't go around saying that working for a living is a joke. You would just solve the problem, right? You would not quit that 50K job because it's not enough and then go look for another job. You wouldn't just quit it. Well, 50 is not enough. Time to find a new job. Well, who would really do that? Well, what if you don't find one, right? When you quit that 50K job, you're not making money anymore, right? So if 50K is not enough, 0K is surely not enough. So no one in their right mind would say, my job doesn't pay enough, I'm going to quit and then start looking, right? What if you don't find one? You're losing money while you look. The expenses are there, and now your income is gone, okay? Well, let's say you do quit, okay? Expenses are piling up. You don't find one, but you do find one, and it too only pays 50K because you're starting over. They're not going to pay you a partner's fee because you're a brand new employee. Oh, what do brand new employees do? They start at the bottom. So if you're making 50K and you look in the same field, you'll probably make 50K again. If you go to a different field, maybe less. And of course, maybe more, but stick with the example, okay? So then what do? Well, you start that 50K, that's not enough, so you quit again, right? Do you see where I'm going with this? Quitting that job, finding one, same amount, quit the job, find one. You're not going anywhere. Foreshadowing, right? Can you see where I'm going with this, right? The question is, if you need 70K, how are you going to get something that's 70K or even 200K? How are you going to get that job if you're switching jobs every few months because it doesn't make enough money? Switch is not going to get you the next job for 200K. Probably, right? So how are you going to do it? All right. So clearly with this example, and hopefully it makes sense, we learned that we need to stay with something. If you want to make money at your job, stay. If you want to get more clients, stay. If you want to stay in trading or you want to make money trading, stay. All right. Well, how do we know when to stay? This is it. I mean, isn't this it? Love to hear from you, but I think this is it. No one can stay with anything, specifically is trading. How do we know our system is right? Okay, Scott, and I love how you use my name and I use it in the third person. Okay, Scott, I'll stick with the system. I buy what you're selling because it's true. Well, what system do I stick with? It's a good question, right? Because nobody trusts anything. Nobody trusts anything, right? Well, let's get back to business again. Okay. There are ways to make money. There are ways to choose a path. Let's go backwards now, back to the workforce. If we were looking for a job, we could take a high-paying job at like a startup, right? Move to Silicon Valley. Okay, I'm moving to Silicon Valley. I'm going to get a job at a startup. I'm going to find the smallest one with the most obscure product, and I'm going to get a job there, right? And maybe you make good money, probably not, but maybe you make decent money to start. But then, of course, the startup takes off like wildfire. It's the next Google, and your salary gets bigger, and your stock options make you one of the early investors in Twitter, and you make millions, and right? That is a path you could choose. There are people who have done that, right? That's absolutely a path. And I'm not saying it's a bad path. But you could take huge flyer after flyer after flyer and just say, I'm going to go to this startup and go to this startup. Or you could invest in this startup, right? Maybe you do it differently. Instead of actually working at the company, I'm going to invest in all my money in this startup. Maybe it becomes Google and maybe you're a millionaire or maybe you lose it all, right? But you could do this path, actually working there or investing in it, okay? But here's the problem, right? Once people start realizing, let's say somebody actually does this, and we can probably cite several examples. Once that happens, everyone will want it. Going to startups isn't like it used to be, right? It's going to be harder and harder to find the Googles and the Apples and those sorts of things, right? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But if everybody wants it, if everybody wants to go the startup route, then guess what? There's less opportunity. And if everybody's doing it, if every 20-year-old says, I want to go to Silicon Valley, I want to do a startup, I want to do da-da-da-da, well, they're not going to pay as much. Because if a startup needs employees and can't find anyone, they're desperate, they'll pay you. But if, just like lawyers, remember that old quote, I don't even know if it's true, they said there are more lawyers in law school than there are actually lawyers in the world or whatever, lawyers at work. I don't know if that's just an urban legend, but that's a funny quote, right? But if they're 18, 19, 21, 24-year-old, whatever, if everybody wants to go be in startups, pay's going down. I can choose from 100 people. I'm not going to pay them a lot, right? That's just supply and demand. So if this is the path you choose and it works for a couple people and you're the third or fourth or 400th person to try it, you realize that pay is going to go down, opportunity is going to go down, or you could get one job, it could work out, and then you can't ever find a job like that again, right? That is one path, but you see the danger in it. First of all, you could just lose it all. And second of all, you could get a job, right? And then quit it because it's going well and it's too stressful and then never find another one, right? There are problems with choosing this path, just so we know, right? Now, there are other paths. Get me? I once saw an interview. This was, I don't know, it was a podcast actually, I think. So I didn't see it, I heard it. But I heard an interview with Mike Rowe. You know who Mike Rowe is? He's the Dirty Jobs. He has that show, Dirty Jobs, where every week people would come on and they do these crappy dirty jobs, literally dirty, where people would get dirty, right, in the mud, right? And in this podcast interview, he said that even during the recession, and this was years ago when you couldn't find a job, even during the recession, there are high-paying jobs everywhere. There is never a shortage, he said, of the jobs that he talks about. Never. There was no recession. People say, I couldn't get a job. I lost my job here, there. I mean, everywhere, right? Everybody struggled during that time. These dirty jobs didn't struggle. at all, according to him. The problem, though, is that nobody wanted to do them. A plumber. Nobody wants to be a plumber. Nobody wants to unclog toilets, right? I think plumbers are extraordinarily valuable, but nobody wants to do it. Or a farm manure mover, right? You need to move manure around. I made that up, obviously, but I just wanted something dirty and smelly, right? People would probably pay a lot of money to get your manure in the right place, but nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants that. Why? Well, they're smelly, but they're also boring. Plumbers are boring, right? And those are for mediocre people. We make fun. Huh? I didn't go to college to be a plumber, right? Mocking such an important job, right? And nothing special about fixing a toilet, according to this line of thinking, right? But you know what? These dirty jobs are the jobs that will last forever because they're not fun and nobody wants them. Nobody wants to do them. But if you want a guarantee of income for life, a guarantee, do a dirty job. What's the guarantee you'll find a job at a startup? What's the guarantee you'll be able to invest in a startup and make millions? What's the guarantee on that? Zero. There's no guarantee. It can happen, but we're talking today about guarantees. I want to guarantee something to you, right? Well, dirty jobs are guarantees. Now, let's get to trading, right? I tweeted this out the other day, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, you should, because it's the best Twitter follow in the world. What I tweeted out was, this is from Michael Adam, who is the founder of Aspect Capital, 6.6 billion. When looking for systematic trading strategy, he says, and this is recently, in the last month or so, what you need to do is find something that is fantastically mediocre. Huh. Sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like a dirty job, right? A startup job is fantastic. It's not mediocre. A dirty job is fantastically mediocre. So he's saying what Mike Rowe in his interview also said. Same thing, right? Training strategy is the same, as I say. Michael Adam used an example in this interview that I listened to. He used the example of, he manages billions, plural, right? He says, well, so if someone comes in with a huge winning percentage, and he used like 60, 70%, if someone came to him in like a Forex strategy, which is his words, a Forex strategy that wins 60, 70%, has a high win-to-loss ratio, and has no losing years, right? And they come to him and say, it's been tested, it's been back-tested, please trade this. Basically, he said, well, how much money do you want to allocate to something that sounds so good? And he said, whatever money you allocate, that's the money you're losing, which is extraordinarily pessimistic. And he was actually quite positive in the interview because I hate pessimistic people. Hate, hate, hate. Do not like negativity. Hate is negative. Get it? Anyway. I thought that was interesting, is saying if you want to go for a hot system, right? Who wouldn't want a 60, 70%, no losing years? Who wouldn't want that, right? But he says that you'll just lose money because it's so fantastic. He says the markets are excellent at eliminating those types of edges. Now, I have a whole counter argument to this, but let's stick with it. Right? It's another day, right? But when you're trading 6.6 billion, I see his point, and surely you can too. Is Shirley here today? I don't know. Anyway. But if he says, if you want something to last forever, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, more, then make something that is mediocre, because nobody wants mediocre. Let's give an example. I have talked literally for years about the Magic Formula portfolio. I didn't make it up. It's from a book, The Little Book That Beats the Market. It's not me at all. I've just been tracking it since 2006. 2005 maybe even, but since 2006 I've been tracking the Magic Formula portfolio, okay? So I have some experience, right? That's how I started trading back in the day, 2004. But in the book, if you read it, the Magic Formula portfolio, and he gives you the rules, and it's super easy, it's averaged over 20% per year for 27 years. And actually it was like 27% for like 27 years, something like that. Right? But for almost 30 years, it averaged over 20%. That would beat everything. Everything. Right? He was almost like sheepish about telling how good the results are. Right? So he, in the book, said the same thing that Michael Adams said and the same thing that Dirty Jobs Mike Rowe said. He said the same thing, right? Why doesn't everybody do the magic formula? Here's why. It has losing years. Who can trade for 12 months, lose money, and then be confident and cocky and move on? Well, I'll tell you one person who does, Mr. Money Mustache, right? Because if you're an index fund investor, you can go multiple years and make no money, right? Fact. But if you've done it right and you have enough money saved up in your account, losing years don't mean a darn thing. I wanted to say a different word, but I didn't. All right. The reason that even though it's the numbers would make you the number one trader in the world for 3 decades, it's not desirable because it has losing years. You know why else it's not desirable? There's no quote unquote trading. In the magic formula portfolio, you buy it once and hold it for a year plus a day to save trading costs, right? Save taxes. There's no trading in the magic formula. You pick your stocks and that's it for a year. There's nothing. Nobody wants that, right? However, it has losing years, mediocre. There's no trading, mediocre, right? That's for mediocre, boring people, right? But the numbers in the long term are probably the best in the world. Get it? It's fantastically mediocre. It's fantastic and mediocre at the same time. And if you're curious, the Magic Formula portfolio for 2017 is up 0.9% for the year. That beats all the billionaires that we've talked about in the previous weeks, right? Because if you're up at all in 2017, you're killing the hedge funds. But anyway, Magic Formula, 0.9. Year before is like 20. I've tracked I think it was 2008, 2009. I think it was 45 to 55% winner for the year, right? So Magic Formula has monster years, but it also has this. Oh, that makes it mediocre, doesn't it? Okay. Well, let's get even more specific. What does fantastically mediocre look like? Well, what are we talking about? What should you be thinking about if you want a guarantee? Well, look at this set of returns. I took these from the early 2000s. Here's your trading performance. Are you ready, everybody? Minus 9%, minus 11, minus 22. Boom, boom, boom. 3 years in a row, lose, lose, lose. Then the fourth year, 26%, fifth year, 10%, and then 4%. So minus 3, up 3, right? 33, 42, right? This is a 6-year period, right? I added that up, right? 33, 42, 36, 40. 6 years and you're 2% down, so to speak, right? That's mediocre and not fantastic, right? That is the S&P 5000 or S&P 500 since the early 2000s. I took it right off the internet, and the internet never lies, right? However, 8% per year for 100 years is its real results. That's the long term. That is fantastic. Who can average 8% or more for 100 years? I can do the numbers. It can make 10,000 turn into 82 billion trillion million, right? The S&P index fund is Buffett's #1 recommendation for normal people. So it must be fantastic if the best investor of all time recommends it. And it must be fantastic because it actually does average this. But this is extraordinarily mediocre. You get the point? Let's do it again. This will be fun. 10% winner, minus 5, minus 2. These are actually 2017, 16, 15. Who's that? Well, you can read. That's Dun Capital Management. I've done posts and webinars on Dun Capital. There's an argument to be made, and you know how I love to win arguments, that this is the greatest fund / trader of all time, right? It's pretty hard to argue that Dun Capital Management is not the best, right? If you're taking roll of the greatest traders of all time, there wouldn't be many names on the list, right? And Dun would be on it. So this is mediocre at best. No one would buy a trading system. I get so many emails with people complaining about this, right? If this were my trading system. However, for about 33 years, he's averaged 13.36%, right? That's way better than the S&P, right? This would turn 10,000 into so much money over 30 years. It's fantastic. 13.36%. Mediocre. Let's do one more set, shall we? Because we're running out of time. 11%, these are the last 4 years. Minus 2, 34, 10%. 2017, 16, 15, 14. What's that? That's that slingshot robot. Remember? The very first robot I ever built. I didn't even know what I was doing, right? This looks pretty good, actually, but who wants to trade that, right? Who would make it through these first 2 years, I mean, in the first place, right? Well, who would ever trade something so mediocre? Well, possibly me. I've been, just so you know, I built this system into multi-charts. I couldn't even begin to think about trading it because it was built for TradeStation. And of course, you can't trade Forex on TradeStation. But I got a little crazy and had my programmer built it for multi-charts. So actually, I can trade it now. So I'm going to be thinking and talking about it much more, right? But again, that's mediocre. Add up all the years, it's fantastic. Fantastically mediocre. Are you starting to get it? These are the types of returns to look for if you want to guarantee it's going to work indefinitely. 40, 40, 40, 40, 40% is the equivalent of getting that startup, right? That's what we're trying to say. Now, let's just list a few other things that are mediocre, right? Trend following is mediocre and fantastic. Trend following has losing years. I'm sorry to tell you. You want to be a trend follower, you're going to have losing years, right? So that's mediocre. Look at the results for trend following long term. It's not mediocre. Fair value investing, right? That's mediocre. Huge long drawdowns are always possible. But guess what? In the long run, you can end up with Buffett's trading record, 20+% for 40, 50 years. The weekly pivot, the weekly pivot robot we've talked about is mediocre, right? It has losing streaks, right? Especially if you're trading big trade size. It's a counter trend system. It trades with a target, it trades with a stop loss. You get involved in a savage trend, you're trading back to fair value. It's not going back. Lose, lose, lose. It can lose for a while, right? Multiple months at a time. What happened, right? That's mediocre, but also fantastic. The Heron the last few months, we just talked about the Heron, 3 months, and it's barely break even, right? According to the testing, and worse than that, although it's been doing good lately, right? And then the Hornet Euro Aussie, right? I've gotten emails about the Hornet Euro Aussie for the lifetime members trading it. It lost 5 in a row, right? That's a long losing streak, right? There weren't big losses. And then last night, it looked like it was going to be crappy again and then had a nice winner. It dove in the right direction, right? So that's losing streaks are mediocre, right? But they're also fantastic if you look at the long-term data. What's the bottom line? Bottom line of this rant is that it can be done. Trading for a living is no different than anything for a living, but you have to look at it smartly. If your goal is, I need a job that pays $1 million a year and I don't have any experience, well, I don't know what to tell you, right? I never say never, but that's going to be a tough one, right? If that's your goal, right? What are the chances of you're 22 years old or you're 42 years old and this is your goal? I'm going to randomly pick a job and I need to make $1 million a year from the very first day and I don't have experience, or I studied it but I haven't actually worked on it yet. That's rough, right? I can't guarantee you anything. I cannot give you the playbook necessarily on how to do this, right? I can't give you a guaranteed playbook for sure. There's no guarantee of this. In trading, same thing. It's possible to catch a 30% to 40% move in 1 week. I had a very good friend of mine, former tennis student, very, very good friend, very special in my life. He read some articles on Bitcoin and decided that this is the only way to actually trade Bitcoin, GBTC, and then did it and invested in it. And he made over 30% in 7 days, right? Do you know what's happened to GBTC lately? Right in the tank, right? But I'm just saying it can be done. So the problem is, how do you repeat that, right? If he would stop investing and he invested all of his savings, I mean, that's a whole year in 1 week. That's fantastic. But how can you repeat something like that over and over and over again? Well, I can't guarantee. I can't guarantee GBTC is going to do that, right? But there are other ways where we can guarantee success. We could study like crazy, study our trading system like crazy, based on timeless principles that will never go out of style, and just work on it. And work on it can mean improving it, or working on it can just mean be patient and compound the gains, right? And crank out revenue for the long term, right? And prepare for it. Have our expenses in line. Have our goals in line. Know that it can lose and prepare for that, right? This is a guarantee. This is how you guarantee your success long term. Bottom line again is, if you want something that will last forever, then make it fantastically mediocre. There are other paths to greatness, but if you're looking for guarantees, then this is how I can give you one. Got it? See if we have any comments, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see. Oh, Elima says, so sorry about Irma. Yeah, I wasn't there, Elima. It was rough for a lot of people. We were with family up north, so I'm okay. The building that we live in, our condo, is okay. We thought about, we're renting there in Florida for right now. If we had rented something else, we may not have been okay, but we had this small little high rise, and we're fine. So thank you. Power's not on, can't go home yet, but we're doing fine. Richard says hello, and I say hello. Oh, Mel says, don't call him Shirley. I apologize, Mel. You in this? Oh, Richard says, yeah, I know. I got it. Richard says, if you lose, then obviously, right, if you lose 100% or you lose 50%, you got to make 100% back. No, I get it. I get it, Richard. I just was trying to keep the example simple, right? If you lose, you have to gain back even more. And Richard makes a great point. 100% agree. It's actually worse than I said, right? No, I totally get that, and that's true. I'm just giving you, even with those losses, the S&P still has averaged that average 8 to 10 or whatever. It depends on who you look at. Someone says no sound, and I hope that changed. And Elima, thank you very much. All right, let's wrap it up. If the slide will click. All right, Heron, of course, we've talked about that. Robots are too, and if you missed the last few weeks, I've made some big changes to Heron, and so far so good. Those have been good, and I put those in the course. As I mentioned last week, I'm a bit behind. Can't go home yet because of Irma, even though everything is fine. Remember that Jill ripped her Achilles. She's in a boot. She just started walking. Yay! But we're obviously not home yet. So that's been a little bit of a delay, a little bit of a problem. I am very excited, though, with all the stuff that I'm working on. There is much, much, much more to come. As soon as I can get back home and get on a regular schedule, I'll be cranking out even more stuff. I'm looking hardcore testing on futures. I know I've said it before, but it's actually coming together. I've been able to work on it quite a bit. I'm working on stocks, a day trading system for stocks. I've got a trend following course that I'm considering, but I'm also considering adding on. I've got a new system that I'm working on, and like a $5 to $10 system, right? What I'm thinking, and this is just an idea, I'm just spitballing, what if I made a system that everyone could afford and we all traded it together? One of these fantastically mediocre systems? Wouldn't that be interesting? And the reason I would charge much less than my other courses is I would just want everyone to have it. Like I would want, I would spend time on, anyway, let's talk about it some other time. But that is an idea. I want a system that everyone could have, because my robots are a little bit expensive, not too expensive, but a little bit expensive. Maybe I'll never do this, all right? So don't hold me to it, but that's a thought in my mind. Of course, you've got my book. We're over 860 right now on YouTube. It's fantastic. And that's where all these recordings are, and there's the contact information. All right, everybody, that was fun. I hope to hear from you via email. Hopefully you'll get on the mailing list, and I'll be able to write to you. And hope I see you again next week. It starts. I just upped the price 100%. It started at 5. Well, actually, in the last 10 seconds, the system got 100% better. So I just raised the price. I was thinking $5 first, but then people, I don't know, if $5 too cheap. Honestly, is $5 too cheap? That's why I feel. I feel like $5 is too, like, that's a terrible system, right? If you make something too cheap, people won't do it. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, you want $5, then just for you, I'll make it 5. Ha ha. All right, everybody, that's it. That was fun. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.